Good morning and welcome to your Financial Empower Hour. This is Jason Cryderman with Great Lakes Investment Advisors. Happy Sunday, Mr. Tony Shore, my wonderful co-host over in Minneapolis, Minnesota area. Tony, I have no idea what you've done with this weather you've sent us, but you can take it back. You can take it back. Like in the summer, we love it because we always say, gee, whatever
Sure.
Minneapolis and Tony got yesterday, the day before, over here in the great state of Michigan, we'll get about that same weather because you guys just blow it across the Great Lake of Michigan and it pops into our state. Tony, it has been absolutely thunderous cold over here. We've been setting records. It's been minus 24, minus 25, minus 20. I mean, it's just been crazy, crazy cold. Have you guys been getting the same weather over there in Minneapolis and sending it our way?
Yep. 2 days earlier, Friday, it was negative 20. It got down to our high on Friday was negative 11, and it got down to negative 26 maybe. And the wind chill was between negative 35 and negative 50 below. That was Friday. Saturday morning, negative 21 when I got up. Saturday morning. This morning when I got up, it was negative 13. So you might have a few more days of this, buddy.
Yeah, well, the forecast kind of looks like it, and it sounds like you've actually had it a little colder than us. Then maybe it's warming up a little bit as it comes past Chicago and over the Lake Michigan, because we haven't had it quite, at least here in Midland, Sanford area, we haven't had it quite that cold.
Yeah.
But this is crazy. I mean, so much for global warming, right? I mean, it's just like, holy
I think
moly.
it's 3. Last I checked today, as of our recording of this show. Today it's negative 3 right now, and the low was negative 13. That was usually when I get up for work, like at 6 a.m. That's usually the low for the day.
Yeah, that's
right?
about with us too. Yep.
And so in the winter anyway, so it was negative 13. We might get up to 10 today, maybe 14 above. So that is honestly, that's the warmest we've been in days.
Yeah,
if we
it's
make
actually not
it
too
there.
bad out there today. As my listeners and viewers, when you see this or hear this show on Sunday, remember Tony and I record this on Monday. So as we're recording this, it's actually
A
5
week
or
in
6.
advance.
Yeah, it's a week
Yeah.
in advance, and
Yeah.
today's not bad, but it looks like the forecast is getting chillier. So.
Yeah.
Now, when it's that cold over there, what all do you guys do, Tony? Like you and the wife and the dogs? I mean, what the heck do you do when it's that cold over there?
Well, like when it was 20, if it's 10 below or more, you try not to go, you go outside as little as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And when it's lower than 20 below, they say if you have any exposed skin that's outside for more than 5 minutes, it will, you'll get frostbite and it'll burn.
Yeah. Isn't that something?
It's a frost burn, and you don't want to do that. That's very dangerous. I will say that Friday, on that day, our Thursday actually was very cold. Not as cold as Friday and Saturday, but super cold. A contractor was going to fix a water line at the end of our cul-de-sac, hit the gas line main.
Oh no!
And guess what? All the furnaces run on gas, right?
Oh,
Natural
no.
gas. So people were without power. Xcel Energy, our energy company here, went door to door. They had about 60 guys out there. There must have been 20 vehicles. They had execs to their top workers. They had over 20 vehicles, backhoes. They were working it, and they went door to door with 2 brand new industrial like heaters, nice metal ones.
Really?
Brand new. Went door to door, handed them, saying, "Here, it's going to be a few more hours." And this was at like 8 at night. They started, the gas line got broke at 9:30 a.m.
Wow.
And it was 8:30 or 9, and they're handing out heaters door to door, and they said, "Keep these. You can have them."
What a
Use
great
them.
gesture, though, right? I mean, they knew with the
Well, they
temperatures
knew we were in
that.
trouble. I mean, it was going to be the record low for the year probably on Friday morning, which it did. I mean, it got down to like negative 20s, in the negative 20s. So at any rate, that was crazy, Jason. I mean,
timing is everything, right? They got a job planned for that day, and they didn't know the temperatures were going to do that. And then of course
those poor guys that had to work out
in the
there,
condition frozen like that, the elements frozen, and you make one little mistake, and you can
the city hired a contractor to fix a water main break, and he hit, that was at the end of the street, and he hit the gas main. Well, the water main leaked into the gas line. That's why it took them so long to fix. And they on our cul-de-sac, they had to dig up the front yard of 2 houses, the one in the corner and mine.
And yours.
There's a grave. It looked like the size of a grave and deep. And Sarah goes, "There's somebody in that hole." I go, "No, they're all standing around it. There's nobody in it." And she goes, "Watch." And then all of a sudden, a guy came climbing out.
Yeah, I climbed out of it. She was right.
I'm like that. And within 10 minutes, they had dug a hole that must have been at least 8 feet deep.
Wow.
I'm like, what are they doing? And why his yard and my yard?
You'll have some new landscaping come springtime.
Turns out there's some type of shutoff or something buried under there in my yard and one of my neighbor's yards.
And
so they had
that was Friday.
That was Thursday, actually.
Thursday. Okay, well that might have been somebody's last Thursday of employment by the sounds of it over there.
Can you imagine the lawsuits if pipes had burst?
Boy.
If they hadn't handed out those heaters, pipes would have burst in people's basements because it was really cold. So, and we already had 2 space heaters in our house that we had cranked, but those helped. And then at 12:35 a.m., our doorbell rings, and it's a knock on the door. And we go out.
The same night.
Same night, but the next morning. I mean, in the middle of the night, 12:35 a.m.
Yeah.
It's XL Energy, and I see there's people around at all the houses. There's a guy across the street knocking on their door, and they had to come in to turn our pilot light on. We were dead asleep, right, with our heaters going.
Yeah.
Well, they got the gas fixed, but the pilot lights had went out, so you could smell gas in our house. Our basement smelled.
So they had to
like
get
gas.
in and start your pilot light.
They came in and started the pilot lights on.
Gosh.
So, and they had to do that on all the houses in our neighborhood.
Well, I'm sorry I asked, Tony. I'm sorry.
But is that crazy? I mean, that's nuts. And then in Nashville right now, as of this recording, I have friends in Nashville. You know, I used to live there, do radio and radio promotions for record labels there. Some of my best friends live there. My friend Shane, him and his wife have been without power for 2 days. They got almost an inch of ice on top of everything. We don't really get that up here. We get snow, but like the trees and the power, all the power lines are down. Huge trees are down, and they've been without power. They're in single digits.
Wow.
Low double digits.
They're not used to that. I mean, that's, they get that once every so often. It's like Florida gets a little bit of snow, and Texas got a little bit of snow.
Yeah.
It's just, this isn't normal, but maybe it is. Maybe
Oklahoma City got 12 inches, and they're not used to that snow. Yeah. So they're everything's closed there. Everything's closed in Nashville. My friend Shane has a full house generator, so he has power, but the cable and internet doesn't work. Right. So they dug out DVDs because that's all they got to do to just watching movies.
Watch the old movies
because they can't watch live TV. So how about you? You've been braving the cold. Other than that, what have you been doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's we unfortunately we haven't had the drama over like you've had. I mean, we had some power outages earlier in the year, but we haven't had that bad of experiences personally. Sure. Myself, anyhow, I know there are a lot of families over here in the Michigan area, though they've gone through some of the same stuff. I mean, water lines breaking and furnaces not working. It's just very, very unfortunate when it gets this darn cold. Yeah. Our biggest issue at our house is when we open the door at 6 in the morning when we wake up, and we have 2 labs. We have a silver lab named Diesel, and we have yellow lab named Gunner. And both of our labs are about 110, 115 pounds. So they think they're lap dogs, but they're not. They're very big.
They will crush you.
They do. They try. But at 6 in the morning, you open the door to let them out, and they step 1 foot outside, and then they look up at you like you're crazy. I'm not going out there. And so you kind of got to push these.
Our dogs are the same way. I had to basically carry our dog out. Yeah. Our dog weighs about 70 pounds, and I had to basically try to lift him out of the house. When it's 13 below, they don't want to go outside.
They just look up at you like you go out there and go to the bathroom like that.
Yeah. And our cats normally try to sneak out. We have a big dog and then four cats. And when we open the door, we usually have to be really careful because they dart out every time. Yeah. They want to escape, but they're house cats. We don't let them outside. But a couple of them are really good escape artists. They always get out, and we have to go get them. But it's been so cold that when I open that patio door, our basement patio door, to let the dog out, and I'm looking around for the cats, I open that door they're standing that they run the other way.
The other way. Yep. They're not stupid. They're not stupid, Tony. They
They're
know.
like that wall of cold hits them like it
Yep.
stings, right?
Yep.
So
Yep. Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's
that's been, that's our struggles, I guess, in my household has been, the kids have had a couple snow days, couple ice days, which,
sure.
they love because Josie loves to sleep in,
Oh
and
yeah.
Carson on the other end, he jumps right up and gets out on the four-wheeler. He wants to be the first one to plow the road and plow the
Oh, of
driveway and
course. Yeah.
plow everybody out in the neighborhood, plows all the driveways. And, we finally got a little bit of snow, so he's able to jump on the snowmobile and ride it around the yard in the
That's
neighborhood.
fun.
So
That's
yeah,
fun.
Carson loves that. He
Yeah.
loves that. Mama and Josie, they just they like staying inside the house when
Hunker
it's cold.
down.
Yep. They hunker down with a blanket and a book and turn the fireplace on. And
Yep.
Lexi being off at Michigan State, she struggled last week. They had some of the coldest temperatures they've had in years down there, and they kept classes open. And some of the teachers did virtual classes, but all of her teachers held actual in-person live classes. And so Lexi was walking around the campus of Michigan State down East Lansing, and it was some of those minus 24, minus 26 degrees. And she got a new appreciation for having to walk to these classes or jump in a car. And it's welcome to the real world, right? So that's what we said. Welcome to the real world, honey. It's
yeah.
So
our
but
car,
everything's
our GMC Acadia would not start Friday morning.
really.
Yeah, wouldn't start because it was outside. Our other two cars are in the garage. And I'm like, why wouldn't it start? It's got a big engine, big battery. Well, the battery was going out. And so when it gets cold, you find out whether your battery's any good or not. And so the battery had never been replaced in it. So it's a battery is about 6 years old, 7 years old. So we replaced the battery and now it starts just fine, but I had to jump start it. Yeah. So it's cold. Well, hey, we're going to take a break and then come back and dig right into our topic, which is the continuation from our last show. Yeah. We're talking about bad retirement advice that people get. And we've got some of the best yet to come retirement advice to avoid and why it's wrong. So, Jason, before we jump into that, can I give away 10 copies of your book?
I think it's a great idea, Tony. Go ahead. That'd be great.
Yep. And Empower Your Retirement is the name of the book. And Jason, I know you and your dad wrote this book. You get a copy of it there. There it is for our viewers. They can see the cover. Empower Your Retirement. Plan for the best, but prepare for the worst. Jason, great book. Listeners, you can get your very own copy. Complimentary, no postage, no obligation. We'll just send you a copy. If you're one of the next 10 people to call and leave a message at the office and say you want a book and you heard about it on the show, that number is 989-835-7203. Once again, 989-835-7203. Or you can go to the web and fill out the contact form. Somebody will get a hold of you. And then when they do mention the book, that's Great Lakes Investment Advisors.com. And we'll be right back with more. This is your Financial Empower Hour. I am your co-host, Tony Shore. I'm here with our host, the man with the plan, once again, Jason Cryderman, talking about some bad retirement advice that's out there, things we've heard. And Jason, I'll give our listeners a little recap. We talked about the first four were Social Security will cover most of my needs. Mm-hmm. That's false. People think, I'm going to spend so much less once I retire. That's not true. I should move everything into bonds and cash when I retire. People hear that. That's definitely not the way to go. And some people say, well, I've got my house. That's my retirement plan. That'll be my money. But it's not liquid. It's expensive to access, and you're going to need to live somewhere. So, and then I think we started to talk about taxes. Well,
We did. Yeah, so we covered those first four. We started to talk about taxes, but then I think we just ran out of time. And
sure.
so we'll jump right back into that during this show. And there's probably, golly, on this list, Tony, I don't think we'll get through them all on this show either, but we'll do our best at least to hit the next 4, 5, or 6 on the list. And then
Sure.
we may have to have a three-peat of the show and finish it up.
Sure.
But yeah, so one of the things, and again, what this is it's maybe some advice that you or some people may have heard from their friends, their relatives, neighbors, or even advisors that they work with. And this advice may not really be true or in their best interest. It might be true for some people or in some instances, but when you got to take into consideration the source of the advice you're getting and make sure that it's custom tailored to you, to your unique financial situation. And so number 5 on our list, Tony, is taxes will definitely be lower in retirement. Unfortunately, what we found over the years is for most people, that is not true. And there's a couple things that we need to think about there. We talk about taxes is your income, earned income from your employer might be lower in retirement because once you retire, you probably don't have any earned income from your employer, or you might have a pension, but that's definitely less than what your earned income was.
Right.
However,
Which is why people think their taxes will be lower.
people think their taxes will be lower because they'll no longer have that guaranteed income from their employer.
Right.
But the reality is, if you're accustomed to living a certain lifestyle, and let's just say a $50,000, $100,000 lifestyle, whatever that is, you may not have the income coming from your employer. However, you're going to get that income from somewhere. A lot of people might trigger that from their 401ks. They might trigger it from their IRAs. They might trigger it from their brokerage accounts, which could IRAs and 401ks, any income taken from there would trigger a income tax situation.
Right.
Any money taken from a brokerage account or other sources could trigger a capital gains, longer term or short term capital gains. So it also, when people think my tax will be lower in retirement, they're not taking consideration those of you that have saved in 401ks and in IRAs. There's such a thing called a required minimum distribution, an RMD.
Yep.
And what that is the IRS forces us all that own those types of accounts, they force us all to take money out at a certain age. That age now is 73. Was 70 and a half, then 71, then it's now 73 years old. Well, think about if you've acquired some wealth inside your IRAs, your 401ks. At 73, the IRS starts telling you exactly how much you must take out. And it goes up every year, by the way. The amount you must take out gets more and more and more every year. And hopefully your IRA values are growing. So now you have to take out more of a higher value. That gets added to your income. You might find yourself in your 70s and 80s paying as much taxes, if not more taxes, than when you were working.
Yeah, it's all about taxable income, and people don't realize that those tax deferred accounts that they get breaks on for the money they put in while they're working each year, all that money and all that compounded interest, it grows, and they have to pay tax on all the growth and the principal. So everything they take out, and the reason they saved it is most likely the reason you have investments is to cover your income in retirement.
Correct.
And that's for most people, at least now, that's in a traditional 401k, 403b, TSP, or IRA. And those traditional retirement accounts, it's all taxable, the growth, the principal. So it's all going to be taxed at a full tax bracket rate. And then you might bump yourself into, if you're taking $50,000, $100,000 out, you could be in a top rate and giving Uncle Sam 20-30% of that money. So you will be paying and then depending on how much income you have in retirement, you have a pension, you have this, you might have to pay taxes on your Social Security, because contrary to what politicians are saying, they did not eliminate tax on Social Security. That's correct. At some point you might say, well, I have Social Security, I'm not paying tax. It's because you're in a lower income tax bracket. But if you do start taking more out of a 401k or get more taxable income, then they'll start taxing Social Security as well. And you don't want that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you really, when you think about it in retirement, you want as much income as you can possibly get with the least amount of taxes.
Yep.
And so structuring a plan, that's why it's so important, Tony, to work with an advisor before you retire. And we call it the retirement red zone, where at least 5 to 10 years, you start working with an advisor on building this plan for the future. And the more proactive you can be, and the tagline of my book says, plan for the best, prepare for the worst. Well, the more proactive you can be in building this plan ahead of time, you can plan to get the most income as possible with the least amount of taxes, but you can also be prepared that if something happens to your income sources or taxes go up, that you're prepared for that. And
Yeah.
so again, being prepared, planning ahead of time. Often people do find themselves in a higher tax bracket than when in retirement than when they were working, because you have Social Security, you have pension, you have required minimum distributions. You might have something called IRMA, or what's your Medicare surcharges. Those can be kind of screwy with taxes. And then think about, or maybe you should also consider preparing for the worst, is if you're married and a spouse passes away, what type of financial position, income wise and tax wise, will the surviving spouse find themselves in? Most surviving spouses are blown away by the tax brackets that they all of a sudden fall into or get hit by when they
Yep.
lose a spouse. And so that's something, definitely, the more you can prepare and plan ahead of time proactively, the easier that's going to be financially.
Because they lose all the benefits of married filing jointly. Filing as a
Correct.
single, the percentage of what you pay as a single is going to be greater typically than
Typically, it's higher, or the same, or even a lot higher,
yeah,
and
a lot
you
higher
lose
because you don't
you
get the
lose deductions, you lose
you
exemptions,
yeah, you lose a lot of the standard deduction.
that's
Sometimes
right.
that's cut in half. So
That's
that's
correct.
it really puts you in a bad situation. Well, you're right. And the key here, I think, to this one is minimize your tax burden in retirement. And to do that, you need forward thinking tax planning. There's a big difference between tax preparation and tax planning. And what you
Yep.
do there is you really focus on looking ahead and making sure tax planning is part of an overall financial plan for retirees or people who are preparing for retirement or in retirement. And again, I want to encourage people, like you said, Jason, work with a trusted financial professional. So before we go on to the next one, we're going to take another quick break here and let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you. Now, this time we gave away 10 books. And again, there's probably still a few left. So if you want to call 989-835-7203, make sure you mention this show and the book. But also, I want to let people know that you're offering a no charge, no obligation consultation if they have questions. You love hearing from our listeners and viewers. Just pick up the phone, set that up with Jason and his team at Great Lakes. It's 989-835-7203. That's 989-835-7203. Or you can set up an appointment or fill out the contact form at greatlakesinvestmentadvisors.com. And we're back with your Financial Empower Hour. You are listening to your Financial Empower Hour with myself, your co-host, Tony Shore, and our host, Jason Cryderman. Jason, we're talking about some of the bad advice that's out there regarding retirement or mistaken thoughts. And I think the next one, what's the next one on the list? We talked about taxes will definitely be lower. That's not true for a lot of folks. What's the next one you want to touch on?
Yeah, that's definitely true. Taxes is one of those things you want to plan ahead and prepare for, because if you think you're going to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, you might want to think again.
Yeah.
Moving on, the next one is the 4% rule works for everyone. Now, what that is, first of all, let's define what is the 4% rule. And I think it was Fidelity, Tony, that came out with this first. And what it is how much of your portfolio should you be able to withdraw in income and not have to worry about running out of principal. And they used to be maybe like an 8 or a 6% rule. And then with interest rates lower, it went down to about a 4% rule. And what that assumed was you could take out 4% of your portfolio every year, and you wouldn't have to worry about, or you'd have a very high probability of success of not running out of money during your lifetime. Well, there's a lot of problems to that. Some of my listeners and viewers right now are probably scratching their head thinking, gee, 4%, man, is that a stagnant? Like I can only take 4% or I have to take 4% every year? And what happens when the market's up higher than that? Can I take more? What happens when the market goes down? Do I have to suffer and not take as much? Yes, I can maybe get 3 or 4% in a CD right now, but what happens if rates go back down to 1 or 2%? Can I sustain 4? So there's a lot of what ifs. And I
Right.
think that rule, first of all, it's very vague for the
Yeah.
average retiree. Well, I don't know about you, Tony, but I don't think I'm average, and I don't think you're average, and I don't think any of my
No.
clients are just average, right? We all wake up
Right.
in the morning and we just look at the mirror and say, I just want to be average today. No,
No.
we all want
No.
to live
Yeah.
above average lifestyles and above average retirements. And so the average retiree, that's kind of vague. But that 4% rule also assumes the ideal market conditions and ignores individual circumstances. So
Yeah.
you have to take into consideration what are your goals, dreams, and objectives? What's your lifestyle? What are your income needs? What are your income sources? Will your income needs go up or down in the future? What is the taxation on the income you take? There's a whole lot of variables that are unique and individual, and then the market conditions above and beyond that. So,
Yeah.
4% rule. I think your withdrawal rates need to be a lot more flexible.
Yeah.
You need to be able to adjust them for taxes, for spending needs, for market cycles,
Plus,
interest
all
rate
your
hikes.
money might not be in the market. So then the
That's right.
a lot of times people assume, okay, you're going to leave the 4% rule. I think assumes you're leaving everything in the market in a 401k, in stocks and bonds, and so you're going to withdraw 4% out of there every year, and that's what you'll live on.
Correct.
And that rule does not work for everyone,
No, it doesn't.
especially
No,
now. In fact, that's an old rule, and now they say it's probably more like, you should only draw out 3 or 2.9%. I mean, I've heard
sure.
different numbers that
Yeah.
they've changed it to, but again, that's such a generic rule of thumb that just it might be a starting point to look at, but it's got to be flexible, like you said, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. I mean, and it could be like a rule of thumb, right? Somewhere to start, but I don't think anybody should write their retirement plan based based on the 4% rule.
Yeah.
Another one, kind of moving on from that one is
Yep.
a lot of people say, well, I could just work longer if I need more money.
That's
Well,
bad advice. Just
that's
work
bad
longer if
advice.
you
I mean,
need more.
first of all, wait a minute, time out. Why are you retiring to begin with? You
Right.
retire not to have to work, right? And when I
Right.
retire, I'm going to retire not to have to work.
Right.
And now all of a sudden you're saying, well, I'll just work longer. Well, then you're not really retired then. Then why did you retire? Like there was no planning that went into that at all. If you retired and then had to go back to work because you needed more money. Well, you didn't plan properly ahead of time, plan for the best, prepare for the worst, reduce your debt, uh, you know, control your spending, get things figured out before you retire so you don't have to worry about going back to work. And that also assumes, first of all, that you're in good health, you're going to be able to work, and jobs are available for you at that age of life. And what I think a lot of people have found out over the years is many retirees actually you retire earlier than you planned due to either layoffs, health issues, caregiving responsibilities. There's a lot of restructuring in jobs where they're just getting rid of older employers for younger, I'm sorry, older employees for younger employees, maybe because the older employee costs the company so much more money, they could hire 2 or 3 younger employees. So there's a lot of variables that are not in your control. When you say, well, if I need more money, I'll just work longer, I'll get a part-time job. Well, I don't know. To me, that is not a successful, happy retirement. I think you should do things more proactively and plan and prepare better so that when you are retired, you don't have to go back to work because you don't have enough money to pay the bills. Does that make sense, Tony?
Yeah, no, it does make sense, and I think, that's a fallacy, and I used to think that, well, if I don't have enough money to retire, I'm gonna work till I'm 70. You hear people say that, right? You've heard
Yeah,
people say, "Well,
absolutely.
I've my retirement plan, I don't need to save as much because I'm just gonna keep working." Well, your job, number 1, there's 2 main reasons why, and you just pointed out that why that doesn't work is because, number 1, your company or your job might disagree with that.
Correct.
at a certain age, usually they'll replace you with somebody cheaper and younger at some
Mhm.
point. Even the best of companies, I hate to say it, ageism is real. It happens all the time.
It's the reality of our world today, right, man?
And well, I've spent 20 years with the company. They wouldn't do that to me. It's like famous last words. They expect you to retire at some point, and if you
Correct.
don't, they will.
And they'll do whatever they can for their bottom line, right? I mean, it's the
Right. I
ultimate
mean, yeah, that's the bottom line to that,
loyalty to your
so to speak.
shareholders first.
Right. And then your health, and that's a big one. A lot of people have to retire because of their health. So, speaking of that, the next one I know you wanted to talk about in the notes here, healthcare will be cheap once I'm on Medicare. I don't have to worry about healthcare costs. That's a
Yeah,
big
good
one, isn't
parlay.
it?
Good parlay. A lot of people can't work later in life because of their health, and then it parlays right into healthcare. And what's health gonna cost? What is healthcare and insurances and all that stuff? And that is a fallacy. Some people think, well, it'll be cheaper when I'm on Medicare. Well, not really. First of all, you have to understand what does Medicare cover and what doesn't it cover. And it's very clear that Medicare does not cover everything. And then you also have to understand the differences between Medicare and Medicaid.
Yep.
Should you go into a nursing home or assisted living and need to qualify for aid? Big difference in Medicare and Medicaid. Whole different discussion, a whole different show to talk about Medicaid.
Sure.
But Medicare, the reality is there's a lot of things Medicare doesn't cover, and you have to be prepared for premiums. You have to be prepared for deductibles. You have to be prepared for prescriptions. Of course, those long-term care costs and all those unknowns and those variables that Medicare doesn't cover, they could add up to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars for a married couple over retirement. So you have to plan for that. You have to be prepared for that. And it's pretty hard to say, here I am at 51 years old. I'm pretty darn healthy. What are my insurance costs, my prescription costs, my deductibles? What's all they going to cost me when I want to retire at 65 or 68 years old? It's an unknown. You don't know that, but you have to somehow build that into a plan to plan ahead of time and be as proactive as you can be, because between health insurance and taxes, those are probably two of the biggest destroyers of finances and wealth in retirement.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Your two biggest costs are probably going to be healthcare and taxes.
Correct. Yep.
And sometimes, depending on your situation, they flip flop. Well,
Yep.
some people it's taxes, some people it's healthcare, but those are usually always the top two, as you've
Correct.
seen. And to reiterate what you said there, I used to have this misconception myself. I thought, oh, once I hit 65, I don't need to worry about healthcare costs because Medicare covers it. But there are still premiums, co-pays, and deductibles and prescription costs, even with a Part D plan. Boy, I'll tell you, my mom and dad are on so many different prescriptions each. They have Parkinson's. It's expensive, and they have to pay every month hundreds of dollars, and that's after the insurance has covered thousands. Medicare has covered thousands of dollars of it, or their Medicare or their Advantage plan, supplemental, but not all of it. And so there are costs, medical costs in retirement, even with Medicare. I think that people need to get that understanding and make sure that's part of their plan. And again, anyone who's working with you will know that and have it as part of their plan. You know this. So let's take a quick break, our final break here, to let our listeners know how they can do both, get a copy of the book and set up a no charge, no obligation consultation. The book is Empower Your Retirement. Jason, you've written a great book there, and you're sending out those at no charge for listeners and viewers of the show. If they mention it, all they have to do is call 989-835-7203. The next 10 people to call in and say, hey, I heard about the book on the show. Send me a copy, 989-835-7203. But the even better deal is a no charge, no obligation consultation. If you have questions for Jason and his team about your personal financial situation, getting a plan in place, getting a second opinion on where your investments are at, where you're at with some of these topics we're talking about, pick up the phone, 989-835-7203, or the web address is GreatLakesInvestmentAdvisors.com. And this is your Financial Empower Hour. I'm your co-host, Tony Shore, here with our host, Jason Cryderman. Jason, great show so far today. What's the next bad piece of advice that people still follow, or bad idea people have about retirement?
Well, the next one I want to touch on, I think, kind of snuck up on people just a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago, back in 2022, when interest rates it went up really fast, and we wonder, well, what's going on? Well, there's an I word called inflation. And inflation got out of control. It reared its ugly head. It was up in the high single digits, low double digits. Inflation can be very, very powerful in eroding purchasing power and eroding your dollar. And, for years and years and years, inflation was so darn low, Tony. It was, 1-2%. There's hardly any inflation, maybe 3%. So it was easy to manage that, to think, oh, gee, well, I make enough money in my portfolio and my returns and my investments. But if inflation goes crazy again, like it did a few years ago, and all of a sudden we're sitting at 6%, 8%, 10% inflation, that is very, very powerful in a negative way, because inflation can compound significantly over time, and it can really, really cut purchasing power in half or more during retirement. So what we thought our money was going to buy in a year or 5 or 10 years, it might only buy half of that. And so you got to be prepared for making sure your money will last as long as you do at reasonable inflation rates moving forward. And I think what we experienced for years and years of such low inflation, I think that was undershooting. I think you should plan for a little higher inflation than what it has been, just to make sure, right? We plan for the best, prepare for the worst. And if inflation isn't that high, you'll have all that much more money. So I think inflation's a big deal. Debt's another really big one. I've heard some people say, well, debt doesn't really matter in retirement. And, I can make my payments and all these things. Well, when you're in retirement, you're on what's called a fixed income. Fixed. You can't go work overtime. You can't go pick up extra hours. It's fixed. You're on Social Security, which is fixed.
No matter how much or how little you have, it's fixed income in retirement for everyone.
And that makes managing debt really hard. It makes it a lot harder to manage debt and monthly payments when we have a fixed income versus if we could pick up extra hours or pick up some overtime or make some more money. Debt reduces the flexibility. It increases stress during market downturns. And it's just the reality is the more debt we have, the more stressed out we become. And the harder it is to make those payments, and the harder it is to manage that money, especially when we have reduced income, fixed income. So I try to tell everybody, again, that retirement red zone, 5 to 10 years before retirement, do everything you can to get yourself out of as much debt as absolutely possible. And maybe you shouldn't retire if you still have too much debt hanging above you. So that's a big deal. Long-term care, we touched on a little bit ago, but Tony, that's another one on the list. I don't need to plan for long-term care. I've heard a lot of people say that, and we pray that that's the case, right? We pray we don't need to worry about our health going bad and having to go to assisted living or go to a nursing home. But, we all know, and within our own personal families and friends, we all know that that's not always the case. And long-term care costs can be extremely, extremely expensive, and often unexpected. There's just a lot of things happen, whether it be a stroke or a heart attack or a slip and fall, or things just wear out in our body, and illnesses and ailings come along. And most people will need some form of care in their lifetime, especially a married couple. There's a very high probability that one of the spouses will need some form of care. And that cost can be extremely devastating if you don't plan for it properly. Now, I'm not here saying everybody should buy long-term care insurance. I am saying we should sit down and talk about, if your health goes south, if we have these unexpected costs, what might they be, and what are all the options, all the methods, all the means in which you could possibly prepare and pay for those. There's a lot more options out there than just long-term care insurance. But sitting down and learning, what are your choices? What are your options? What might those costs even be? And building something into your plan to be as proactive to prevent, hopefully, those types of costs from financially devastating your family in retirement.
Yeah, both my parents, as you know, I've mentioned this on the show before, are in long-term care right now. Both happen to have Parkinson's. My mother's long-term care monthly cost is $11,000 a month. My dad's is $7,600 a month.
Wow.
I mean, I don't care how much money you have. That's real money, and that's going to be
$250,000 a year.
That's going to be difficult to cover. You need some type of insurance. You need some type of plan for that. I think it's really important to note these things. And people say, well, that's not going to be me. I'm never going to need long-term care. Yeah.
How many times have we heard that?
Yeah.
How many times have we heard that over the years?
Yeah. If you reach 65, you got a 2 out of 3 chance of needing long-term care. 2 out of every 3 people, basically.
And that's good. That's not good odds, by the way, people. That's not
no,
good
that's
odds.
bad odds. Yeah. That's not 1 in 3. That's 2 out of 3. Yeah.
Yeah. The statistics currently show you reach age 65, you have a 66% chance you will need some form of care. And every year you get older, those chances go up, meaning there's more higher probabilities.
Yeah, it goes up all the way to 75%. So that's not good. Well, hey,
very scary, very expensive.
It is. Well, hey, we're almost out of time for today's show. We're gonna
wrap time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it, Tony?
It sure does. And we had to talk about the weather for the first segment because it's just been crazy.
It's been so brutal. Hopefully next time we talk, we see a little warm up for both of us.
Yeah. Well, and next time we talk, maybe we'll get in our Super Bowl picks and see who's right and who's wrong.
Oh, yeah. And I got to remember to ask Carson, so you and Carson can have your friendly little wager.
Yeah. We'll have to ask Carson what he thinks about the Super Bowl. Maybe get him on the show. See if you can bring him in at some point.
Well, I know
if he has a snow day and you can keep him, he'll probably want to be out there riding the snowmobile or something.
He'll want to either be plowing the road in the driveways or riding the snowmobile. Pretty tough when it snows to get that boy in the house. He's an outdoorsman for sure.
I bet he is. Well, hey, good talking to you today, Jason. A lot of great information. And listeners and viewers, if you have questions or want a copy of that book, call 989-835-7203. Set up that no charge, no obligation consultation at 989-835-7203. And that does it for today's episode of your Financial Empower Hour.